everyone, and welcome to the Alexa Show. My name is Alexa Servodidio, and I'm your host. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Well, tonight I have such an incredible show planned. With us, I have Commissioner of Veterans Affairs, Thomas Saadi. Commissioner, welcome so much for coming to the show tonight. It's just a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me here this evening.
Of course. So tell us, how did your journey start as becoming commissioner?
Well, it really began probably, when I was much younger. I was very interested in joining the military. And one thing led to another. I never did. I actually went to college and then into law school. But then after completing law school and practicing with the Connecticut Attorney General's office after 9/11, I felt I needed to do something more. And so I did receive my commission about 14 years ago as a judge advocate in the U.S. Army Reserve. And through that service, I became much more connected with veterans organizations, applied my legal skills to helping them and to helping veterans as consumers in Connecticut on behalf of the Attorney General. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I was on military duty and met the former commissioner, Sean Conley, when we were on military duty together. When he was appointed by previous governor of Connecticut to the position, he brought me on as his chief of staff and general counsel. A couple of years into that, he resigned his position to seek other professional opportunities. I became acting commissioner and then had the privilege of being nominated and confirmed then by the General Assembly as Commissioner of Veterans Affairs. So I've been with the agency now for just about 4 years and am near 2 years as Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs.
Wow, incredible. What do you see some of the obstacles, the barriers that our veterans are facing right now?
Well, I often say that there's not necessarily a lack of programs and services, but oftentimes the challenge is ensuring that we're connecting veterans with the programs and services that are available and making sure that those agencies and state, federal, and community-based nonprofits know that they need to reach out to veterans as well. So the challenge is connectivity, and there's various types of challenges. We have older veterans who maybe are not as computer savvy or don't use mobile applications as much, and so they'll communicate by email, phone, fax, or the old traditional snail mail,
Yes.
as we say. But we have to be able to engage them and a newer generation of veterans who don't want to hear that they need to fill out a hard copy of a form. They want to fill it out online. They want to hit a button and send that form in. So here, not here, but at the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs and the federal VA, our partners in co-managed care for our veterans as well, are automating many of our services and program applications so that we can better reach out and have that connection with veterans. Also, there are many community-based events, panel discussions, veterans service fairs, stand downs, as they call them, or veterans coffee houses, where organizations can connect with veterans. I think, veterans, they served in the military, they were trained, and their training taught them to adapt and overcome. And sometimes that training has taught them to be maybe sometimes a bit too self-reliant, where maybe they're hesitant to reach out. So if they don't reach out to those programs and services, we need to reach out to them. And that's one of the things we're working on trying to overcome, is that connectivity and making sure veterans know the benefits that are available for them.
Yes, because I find so many times when I'm working with veterans, a lot of times being able to reach out or to connect is not something really that they do. And I think so many times community members want to reach out, they want to show support, and sometimes that connection is hard to make, and where to go and how to begin. And I think so many times our veterans are so proud and feel that they can do a lot of this on their own.
Yes.
And I really think it's about having a community, having a support, and knowing that we honor and trust them and bless them so much for everything they've done for us, that us as a community would love to give back and have some support.
Just before the show started, we were speaking about some issues and talked about Vietnam veterans and their service. I think a lot of the issues came out of when those individuals came home from the service in Vietnam. They had just fought a war, and then they had to fight a second war, and that was enduring the attacks and insults that they had to endure when they came back, and then the apathy of the public and the bureaucracy to their plight, to the visible and invisible wounds of war they had, PTSD, TBI, the effects of Agent Orange. And for decades, those things were not recognized. So those veterans didn't receive the proper recognition for their service or proper programs and benefits. Thankfully, that stain on our history, I think we've now begun, we are moving in the right direction, and that our Vietnam veterans endured that. They fought for programs and services, not for themselves, but for their brother and sister veterans. And so now this next generation of veterans does have that support, that recognition that the programs and services are there. And also, it also is translating to more programs and services and recognition for our Vietnam veterans. But again, the key is ensuring that our veterans and current service members, because with Guard and Reserve doing so much more duty today than they did decades ago, you can be a veteran but also still serving, and that we need to reach out to them and include the families.
Yes.
Families serve along with the veterans when they're in uniform and when they return home. And oftentimes it can be the family, other loved ones, extended family, or friends who can help that veteran connect to programs and services that they're either unsure of or just simply hesitate in connecting with.
Yes. And you find so many times the families too, as if a caregiver in any other type of population or relationship, that caregivers too are going through a lot of stress. The loved ones, the children, the mother, the father is going through so much, knowing that their loved one is stationed, is active, inactive, but still I think it's being able to support the whole family and the whole unit, that everybody needs that support.
You're absolutely right. It is a holistic approach. It should be a holistic approach to the individual service member and veteran, but also to the families. Because the families, as I said, they serve with their veterans, and oftentimes there's a higher level, or it can be a higher level of anxiety for the family because they don't know day to day when a loved one is activated and mobilized and overseas in a combat theater or in any theater of operation, what is happening from moment to moment. So there are community-based and governmental-based programs and services for families. The military has done a great job. I'm still serving in the reserve. I have 14 years of service, and I can tell you that when there's soldiers from my unit that are deployed, the Army and community-based organizations do an excellent job through family readiness groups to support the loved ones here who are awaiting the safe return of their veterans.
Yes, and I find so many times with the veterans that I work with is a lot of sometimes the community pushback, and I think it's okay. You don't have to agree with war, you can agree, whatever, that's your own personal opinion. But I think we need to really support those that have suffered trauma, that have gone through what they've gone through, that we as civilians have no clue. Our bad day and their bad day are two different things. And I think it's really important that we really recognize that before any judgments, to really be able to be there to support them for what they're doing, and also to help them when they return because of PTSD, addiction, and all of that, which is so prevalent, especially if you have to deal with all of these issues on your own.
Absolutely. There's something that you just mentioned about having a bad day. So a bad day on the civilian side is very different, because a bad day on the military side for those who are in a combat theater may mean loss of limb or life. And that hangs over them each and every day. You're absolutely right. So it's our veterans who have served and those who continue to serve. They don't decide which conflict they serve in. They don't decide where they're sent. They don't decide the national policy that determines what wars we are or are not involved in. But it is the veteran and service member who serves, who sacrificed, and sadly some making the ultimate sacrifice. And we must remember that, and in doing so as a country, as you said, not put our opinion or impose our feelings about domestic or international policy and have that cloud our support for our veterans and service members. We must support them and their families no matter what we think of the conflict that they are involved in, because again, they didn't choose that conflict or to go there. But we must support them. And you're absolutely right that the mental health approach as well is incredibly important, because it's those invisible wounds of war that, because of that, we don't notice. If we look at somebody, you and I sitting here, we may not know the trauma that somebody went through because they don't have something that is an outward manifestation of what they had to endure. And that's why it is so important at the federal level and at the state level that we support our veterans, provide broad, full-spectrum mental health services dealing with PTS or PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and those who are victims of whether it is military sexual trauma or other types of trauma and crisis that is related to their military service, and also provide mental health support to their families.
Yes, definitely. Is there any type of policy that once someone is finished, is honorably discharged, either way, is there certain services that they are recommended or required to take for a certain amount of time? Or does a person choose or not choose if they need to have mental health services?
It really, from the standpoint of mental health services, that is going to be a choice, a self-election or a referral. If you're still in the military, you can be referred if there is something happening that's affecting your military service, your performance. As I said, I'm still in the reserve, so there's situations where you refer a soldier for an evaluation or a member of the military for an evaluation. But for the most part, when individuals come back, Guard or Reserve, and they're discharged from active duty, or individuals who are full-time active duty and they return and leave the military, it is going to be something where they need to reach out, or a family member, loved one, colleague, or coworker can reach out, can refer them directly by telling that individual, that veteran, where there are supportive services, whether it's a community-based nonprofit, whether it is something provided by the federal VA, through West Haven or New Haven here in Connecticut, through our half-dozen vet centers that are around the state, through the various programs with the Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. There is a myriad of programs out there. And at our DVA website, we have the links and connections to the federal VA, to other state-based mental health supportive services. And if someone doesn't want to go on the website, they can call us at the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs, reach out to any one of our 5 district veterans service offices, one in each of the congressional districts. All that contact information is on our website, and we will refer them.
Okay. Is there any sort of time limit or duration after someone has finished serving? Because I know a lot of times people feel, oh, it's been 6 years, it's been 10 years. Even civilians, I don't need help, I should have gotten over that, or I should have worked through it. That if someone later on down the road, a veteran, feels, I really need to reach out for services, and they've not been in service for a very long time, does that have any impact?
It has over the past many decades, particularly as we discussed earlier, the issue of Vietnam and Agent Orange, where there's some claims that have to be filed with the federal VA within a certain period of time of when the exposure occurred for both visible or those maybe invisible wounds of war. But in general, someone should not hesitate to file a claim, because if we can establish, as their veteran service officers and representatives, or if it's a community-based veteran service organization that represents them in filing a claim with the federal VA, if a link can be established to their military service, then we should be able to get them some level of coverage or benefit. Can't say what percentage they would get or what level, but at least file that claim. The other key thing to understand for veterans who were denied benefits and programs in the past, eligibility criteria have changed over the years. So if someone was denied something previously, they may very well be eligible for it now. So it doesn't hurt to try to file a claim again, to contact the State Department of Veterans Affairs, a local veteran service organization, and begin that claims process or an appeal of a denial.
And putting in a claim, do you find a lot of times maybe veterans feel discouraged to do that, or feel that there's a stigma when there's a claim? Because I can imagine sometimes people feel that way. As a therapist, I wouldn't see that at all. But I think so many times people say, I don't know if that's going to be on my record or what's going to happen.
Absolutely. It's anecdotal. I don't have statistics on it, but I know there's veterans I spoke with, some who are completely done with their military duty or still in the Guard or Reserve, who are very concerned with reaching out for mental health services because of that stigma, because of the fear that it could affect promotion opportunities in the future. Now, in the military, putting my other hat on, we tell our soldiers, please reach out. We want you to be healthy physically and mentally, and for your families to be healthy so you can perform your duties, but also to be a healthy individual and have a positive experience in life. So I always encourage, please reach out for that supportive services. And there are also many opportunities for anonymous treatment. But I mean anonymous as the military doesn't have to know, or a formal state agency. The federal vet centers around the state of Connecticut and in other states can help with that. And there's one number, and I have to read the number to make sure I put it out. It's the 24-hour hotline, a crisis line. It's not just for general mental health services, but if someone themselves is in crisis, or if a loved one, colleague, or friend notices somebody who's in crisis or approaching that they can call, and that is 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, and that is available 24 hours a day. And also, I believe you'll put up a graphic sometime in the show, but I want to hold this up. This is our DVA mobile app, and on this, people can download this from the App Store, and when they do, it gives them direct connection to supportive programs and services, the hotline. They can also text and email as well if they're more comfortable in doing that. And this, when you talk about connectivity and a new generation of veterans, the mobile app we have found has been a great way to connect those veterans, because they're not only do they not use, sit at a desk with a computer, they're not even carrying a laptop or tablet, they're using their smartphone. And this mobile app is a way to reach out to them.
I was just, as you were speaking, I had these thoughts crossing about how hard it must be for someone who's served, that all their training, I would think, would be to have to deal with such harsh conditions and deal with such tough things and not break down and have that strength to go through, because they're in war, they're going through this. How do you switch that mindset when you come back to a civilian world and say, it's okay to switch this mindset and say, okay, I need help? That must be such a hard transition. Or do they even know that's something that they could be doing and would be very encouraged?
It is a difficult transition for many, especially, again, for those invisible wounds and those issues related to mental health and addiction. But I think there is strength in knowing that you do need some assistance, not because you're weak, but because through your service, you received an injury. It's an injury just like a visual injury, a visible injury, the invisible wounds can oftentimes last longer, be more intense, cause more pain and damage than some of the visible wounds. And oftentimes they are connected. So what I try to tell veterans, even individuals in my own family who have served and have reached out and received great beneficial services through vet centers and through other supportive programs, that it is not a sign of weakness to reach out. It can be, and it is, a sign of strength and can make you stronger as a person, and also help if you have a disconnect or issues with family because of those wounds, those mental health issues. It can help to repair that as well.
And I've seen a lot of PTSD with the veterans that I've worked with, and I think a lot of times thinking of coming to talk therapy and speaking about all the different events that they have seen and crisis they've gone through is a bit too much. And I've done a lot of EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, with them, which helps them. It's not as going through every detail, but being able to reprocess all the negative that they've seen, and also so they don't have to carry this heavy load with them in their brain and their mind all over. Have you seen a lot of work with that?
I can't say I've seen a lot of work, but I know of individual veterans who have, I refer to it as treatment, or have gone through EMDR therapy, and they have told me that it has been a very positive experience for them. And that maybe at first people would be a little bit hesitant and not understand. And I can't understand the details of it. I don't know exactly how it works, but I can tell you that when they've explained it to me, they said it's had a positive experience. It was a positive experience for them and has been helpful in their lives, and also by extension with their relationships with family and friends.
Because I think a lot of times they might not even realize after they finish serving that there is PTSD, or that there's just basic anxiety, or just having to deal with and process everything they've gone through. And I think so many times we see on the news, on the media, about addiction and about suicide and all of that. What work has been done with that, have you seen?
Well, to take a step back, you speak about many not realizing that they're suffering through this, that oftentimes, and I particularly with regard to Vietnam veterans that I know personally, that I have as individuals that receive services through our agency, that maybe when they return, they hung up that uniform because of the attacks that the public were engaging in upon them. So they hung up the uniform. They didn't talk about their military service. They really didn't get involved with veterans organizations. They worked hard, and they worked long hours, and oftentimes many days a week, working Saturdays and Sundays, and they worked through it, they thought. And then later in life, something happened. A crisis may have occurred in life, maybe a loss, maybe retirement, a physical manifestation started, and they began to realize that, I think I do need some assistance or help, or I want to reach out now to a veterans organization. And after 9/11, when there was really a change in the mood and people began to welcome and really thank our veterans, I think the Vietnam veterans began to feel a little more appreciated, and that has increased. So more and more, they are engaging with supportive services, with veterans organizations, and in doing so, helping to lift that stigma. But there is more being done in, people call it alternative therapy, I say in therapy. Whether it's, the acronym again, EMDR,
Yes.
therapy, and others are being utilized because traditional therapies don't necessarily address all things for all people. And oftentimes, I think many people would at first were hesitant, but when they hear success stories, as I've heard from the veterans I've spoken with, that they share that in discussion groups with their comrades, their brothers and sisters in arms, who then will engage in these types of treatments that can be incredibly helpful as part of an overall full spectrum therapeutic plan. And also to include family in these therapies as well, not as part of the therapy, but as part of understanding what the individual veteran is going through.
Yes. And I think only recently has the stigma on mental health been lowered a little bit. Now it's unfortunately more of a topic because of what we're seeing on the news with school shootings and violence and all of these different things and the heroin epidemic. So people have to discuss it now. It's hitting more people, but I think it's really important to have all these open, tough discussions on mental health. And it's something definitely not to be ashamed of and not to have that stigma, that it's really important to reach out and that no one can really do it on their own. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong. There's just sometimes we all need someone to speak to and to get services.
Absolutely. In the military, it's a team effort. The military is an amazing organization. I say this, the U.S. military is among, I believe, the most diverse and dynamic institutions in the world. A multitude of religious backgrounds, racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, different beliefs, different politics, whatever it may be, but they come together as a team. So that team also should exist when someone is a veteran. And that team should be that veteran, their brother and sister veterans, community providers, the public, and the government, federal and state and local, all coming together to still work as a team to support those veterans once they come home and they've hung up that uniform. And being part of that team means destigmatizing the issue of reaching out for supportive services for mental health and addiction issues, and also just letting veterans know that while you might not understand what they went through, you appreciate that they went through something that was intense for those who served in combat situations, but even those who didn't. They served their country. They raised their right hand. They took that oath to put themselves in harm's way if they should be called to do that. So, I always say we thank all our veterans and service members, no matter their branch of service, no matter whether they served domestically or abroad, whether it was in combat or in peacetime, because everyone could at one time have been called to go up and put themselves in harm's way in service to our country. So we have an obligation to fulfill that mission, which, and at the DVA, the Department of Veterans Affairs, our mission is serving those who served. And with those 4 simple words comes a great responsibility, because it's only because of the service of the men and women of our armed forces for nearly 2.5 centuries that you and I and everyone in this nation gets to live in this free and democratic country. So what we must do is to welcome them home, provide them with support services that they need and require, and to ensure that we don't stigmatize them when they ask for help.
Yes. If a veteran or a family member are watching the show right now and they don't know where to begin, but they have a feeling something isn't right, that they need to reach out, what could be their first step?
Really contacting our office, my office, the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. Go on our website, look for information, call the phone number 860-616-3600 on the website. Our email addresses are also on there. And I have a great director of our Office of Advocacy and Assistance, Mr. Ryan McKenna. He's a combat veteran himself, and he's the one that leads our 5 district offices, one in each of the congressional districts. All combat veteran staff with veteran service officers who can begin that dialogue and either do that warm handoff to another agency or a community-based organization for that family member or veteran, or be their advocate in getting them connected with programs and services, applying for benefits on their behalf as they're represented before the federal VA, or just reach out to community-based organizations that are out there.
Yes.
But if someone is confused or feels a little bit lost, our agency is there, whether we can provide the service or our federal partners through Newington and West Haven or other state agencies or community-based organizations.
Now, we were discussing a little bit before the show. You were telling me about a recent, in 2018, an act was passed, something about honorable discharge. What is that?
So Connecticut has led the way in trying to expand and address these issues with veterans who received other than honorable discharges. So as most people understand in military parlance, if you receive anything but an honorable discharge or a general discharge under honorable conditions, aside from those two, you will not receive most, if not any, VA benefits, and you will be denied most state benefits. There's a limited amount of federal mental health support you can receive even with an other than honorable discharge. But last year, a new law went into effect in Connecticut, and I want to praise Iraq and Afghanistan veterans who supported that, the Yale Law Clinic that worked very closely with them, and our legislators and veteran service organizations that all came together, and I had the honor of working with them and our legislature that passed a law that provides state-based programs, services, and benefits to veterans who have other than honorable discharges, as long as they receive a certification from a statutorily directed clinician that their PTSD, their TBI, or military sexual trauma, which may have resulted in this other than honorable discharge, preceded that discharge. They get that certification, fill out a standard form on our website or with every state agency, and they're eligible, not just for mental health services, but any Connecticut state program, benefit, or service. We believe it's the first of its kind in the country to have such a broad reach, and that the reason behind that is I know of individual veterans who had multiple tours of duty, honorably served, and on their last tour, they were discharged other than honorably because of something traumatic that happened. They began to self-medicate. They were administratively boarded out and took that OTH, which maybe they could have fought, but they said, look, I need to get home. I've done my 2 or 3 tours. Some have been injured in combat. So this is something to address that and not to compound those invisible wounds of war that they received in service to this nation.
It's groundbreaking. I hope all states adopt this and pass this. We're at the end of the show, and I just wanted to, again, thank you so much. I know I have so many more other questions. I'll definitely have to have you back on. But again, thank you so much. It was an honor to have you on the show
pleasure
tonight.
to be on the show, and of course, my thanks to you for getting the word out and in support of our veterans and service members.
Yes, absolutely. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, show ideas, or you'd like to be a guest, please send an email to alexas29@AOL. Everyone, have a good night and God bless.